Welcome to the Millionaire University podcast. I'm your host, Brien Gearin, back in the saddle with you today. And on this edition of the MU Pod, I'm joined by Mr. Mark Williams. He's the owner of Mark D. Williams Custom Homes in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's a custom home building and remodeling company serving the Twin Cities area. And besides building incredible homes for the past 18 years now, Mark is also the host of the Curious Builder podcast, and he is a staunch advocate of the trades and the tradespeople who bring everything to life via their quality craftsmanship. Mark, I could keep going, but I guess I better let you get in some words here too. So welcome to the show, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It's always fun when you have two podcast hosts. It'll be interesting to see which one of us can ask a question and stop, and which one can actually listen. I think actually when I started the podcast 2 years ago, and my wife, her first question was, you have to listen to people, right? And I thought that was a funny response because I'm a bit of an extrovert talker. But now I'm on the other side. I'm being interviewed, so now I can throw the listening ears away and just let it fly.
Let it fly. That's right. And I'm sure we'll find a couple rabbit holes we can dive down in as well. So I'll do my best as a host to make sure we go in, but find our way back out. But I think that's where all the gold is turned up from anyway.
I agree.
So, well, Mark, today we want to learn all about your business. We want to know how you started. What's the origin story to the present day, to the future plans of your custom home building business. But also, I'm really excited to chat with you because we're going to talk about starting a business in the trades and what that looks like in 2024. And now as we head towards 2025, you work with a lot of trades businesses, a lot of people who are your classic Main Street type of business. And in terms of those who help you actually build the custom homes that you design. So I know you have your finger on the pulse of this industry, and you also run a Curious Builder collective. So you are really hands-on with the tradespeople and trades business owners. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to start right at the top here. What's the origin story? How did you get into custom home building, and what brought you to the point you're at today?
Well, great question. All right, I'll keep this one short. But essentially, it's 20 years. We just had our 20th anniversary here. I think we're coming up on 21 in May, which is just wild how fast that goes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I started a lawn mowing business back in high school. My mom and dad were builders and interior designers, and I knew I didn't want to do what they did because I was the firstborn kid. You don't want to do what your parents do. I mean, great modeling. I mean, my parents and I are very close. In fact, I've interviewed my dad in the podcast. Actually, a year ago, I interviewed my dad, and cool. I told my mom just yesterday that I'm going to bring her on. She was the designer, and I said I want to talk to her. So I've learned a lot from both of them. Maybe we'll start there. I'm a parent of three now. I didn't realize at the time, being the son of an entrepreneur, I honestly thought everyone's dad was an entrepreneur and mom was an entrepreneur. I just thought that's when you grow up with, you think everyone is that way.
Yep.
And I learned so many things that are just basic. I remember early on, maybe doing a high school report, who knows what it was, but I remember asking my dad, like, what makes you a successful builder? And his answer was, honestly, it's not that the competition is that great, it's that they're that bad. And his point is, the bar is pretty low. He's like, say what you're going to do and do what you're going to say. And, he said, look people in the eyes, give people a firm handshake, return people's phone calls, open the doors for old people, and, respect your elders. That's pretty much the playbook. And you think that's not really that complicated. Honestly, the biggest thing is communication. That's always been my hot button. And I think anyone who owns a business or wants to own a business, if communication isn't one of your top priorities, it needs to be. Because, it doesn't have to be, I do think most people appreciate speedy response. I'm actually in 20 years, I sometimes, and owners can agree with this, I think, but sometimes we become a prison of our own communication and we won't empower our own teams to grow. Because if I keep jumping into the fray to answer some question of my project manager or somebody else, I'm not allowing them the space. Oh, Mark's going to save it. And before I knew it, I'm just doing all the work and I'm not empowering them. So there's a tricky side of this communication. But in general, good communication just means there's this old saying, I think it's Brene Brown, she's made it famous, which is just clear is kind. And I think when you can be clear in your delivery of what you're saying, and if you can just explain it clearly to your clients and just really own it. I think the only difference between myself now and 20 years ago, well, there's actually quite a few differences, but I think as you get older, you realize I guess to relate to football, Tom Brady said, if he could have the brain that he had at the end of his career at the beginning, just everyone talks about it once you become sort of a veteran. Like, yes, a lot of your physical skills diminish, but your mental skills and your confidence and like your clients can just see it come out of you in the way that you hold yourself and your confidence. And a lot of it is you just believing your own message. And that does come with time. I don't think you can, I mean, there's that adage, fake it till you make it. And there's some truth to that. But, ultimately, once you've done something, we often say, like, I don't need the practice. Like, I've built homes for 20 years. Like, I don't need the practice. Like, I'm good at what I do. And that competence comes out in your confidence. And so I think that's very clear. So anyway, going back to the beginning, I had a lawn mowing business. I was mowing all the neighbors' yards, making pretty good money actually, if I recall. And anyway, so I'm like, well, this is pretty good. I remember printing off these little cards that said, professional lawnmower, and I was thinking that was so crazy. It's like I don't own a business. Can I even say professional? But I think I made like $10,000 a summer back in the mid '90s. And I had a trailer. I'd go around, and before I know it, I'm writing receipts, and but anyway, it did pretty good. I sold it. I actually sold the company or my book of business
Wow.
to somebody when I went into college. And I think I maybe sold it for 5-10 grand. But for a college kid, like I thought that was pretty cool. Paid for
Yeah.
one tuition or 1 year of schooling. Actually, oddly enough, I went to school for communication, which
Eh,
is ironic because I'm not sure I learned anything. And now that I'm in podcasting, it's like that actually is applicable, but I don't remember anything from 20 years ago that podcasting wasn't really a thing. So then anyway, I was in sales. I sold copiers for 1 year. So I learned a lot about, again, communication, follow up, your lead tree, client management systems, things like that. And but then I was like, this isn't very fulfilling. That was the only job I've ever had in my entire life. I was wearing a suit every day. I hated it, and I liked the competition. I liked, it was a competition on. I did a lot of athletics, and so I love competition. But it was if you made 100 phone calls, then you would get 20 responses, and of those 20 responses you get 6 meetings, and of those 6 meetings you would get 4 closed. And so it became this numbers game. Obviously, the more calls you had, the more meetings you would get. The more meetings you would get, the more likely you were. So it was very clear, like this number tree of how it went down the road. Anyway, that wasn't very fulfilling after about a year. And so my mom and dad were retired, so I didn't really have to worry about passing the torch. And I don't think I really wanted that. I'm sure there was a part of me that's like, I didn't want someone to give me something personally. Now, after 20 years, I realize that is a complete. I have a whole podcast I've done on, people that think that their business is handed to kids. You trust me, you got to earn it. I don't care what generation you are. Each generation gets exponentially harder than the first because you have to learn a lot of this stuff in ways that you can't really learn other than just doing it. Anyway, one of my uncles who was also in building said, "Why don't you build a house?" And I was like, "Wow, that's a novel concept." And so I borrowed some money, built a house. I'm like, "This is amazing." Sold my Jetta, bought a Silverado, got my building license, and that was 20 years ago. And I just started building and I basically just listened to my clients. I had really strong relationships with my trade partners. I mean, even as I was a little kid, I used to run around the job sites with my dad with that, I'd steal the framers' hammers, and I was pretty quick. So I would steal the framers' hammers. His name was Kenny Weeworth's, and I would run up into the attics and like monkey bar it and see if he could chase me. And he must have chased me once, otherwise he never would have done it. It's like a dog who wants to play catch. And like once you play catch once with that dog is never going to leave you alone. In this
yeah.
analogy, I'm the dog. Anyway, so I always had great relationships. So I was never someone that, I've never really been the expert. I've always sort of been the guide because I tell my clients all the time, I'm not the expert, but I surround myself with really smart people, and I'm not afraid of asking for help. I've often said that I think asking for help is the most underused word in the English language, help, because if you genuinely mean it and I would ask, I ask my designers, hey, help me. What do you think we should do in this situation? Or I would ask other peers. That's probably the best advice I could ever give a business owner. And I still use it all the time. When I'm dealing with a challenging thing, and even though I'm experienced, talking this out, a lot of times we know the answer within ourselves, but it's kind of that, there's a verse in the Bible. It says, "Iron sharpeneth iron." You're kind of it's the practicing back and forth of what you probably already know, but then you kind of work out the edges on it until you develop this thing that you're like, yeah, that's it. That's what I need to do in this situation. And so, yeah, we kind of went on a number of gopher holes on that one, but yeah, I guess that was the origin story, and I guess 20 years later, here I am.
Wow. Okay. And maybe I missed this. Was your dad a home builder too?
He was a builder, and he
Okay.
built like 40 homes a year. So he was much more of a production builder, but he was still custom home builder at that time. And I build about 4 homes a year, much higher end. We're kind of in today's world, we're kind of in the 1.5, 2 million to 5 million range. And then our remodels are probably 300,000 to a million, depending on, the area they are in the cities, tear downs, that kind of
Sure.
thing. And I think his price point was more in the 250 to 400 range. But again, that was back in the 70s and 80s. And so there's got to be some inflation adjustment there. But,
Sure.
and my mom was an interior designer. So I always say I learned my business acumen from my dad, but I probably learned my people skills from my mom. And she was an interior designer. And I've always sort of, I spoke about this recently on the Curious Builder podcast, and it was just that I don't really like that line, and entrepreneurs hear it a lot of the client is always right. In fact, I probably hate it because I don't agree with it on any level. First of all, I don't think the word always, there's pretty much almost nothing. You could probably say water is wet. But that's not even true because when it's frozen. Anyway, there's just so few things that when you say the word always, it's like my red flags are up. I'm like, nope, I'm not sure I buy the statement.
Yep.
And so I think that the idea behind it, that you want to please your client, you want to make them happy, which is really what the core of that quote is. But if I ever had a client quote it to me, that would be a huge red flag. One of the things I think is really important for any business owner is identifying your ideal client. And this is something that I had no idea what that even meant until probably 3 years ago. And so, whether you're out there listening and you own a business or you're going to start one, understanding who your client, I think there's that old saying, begin with the end in mind. And I'm going to say two things. It's the two sides of the coin because I can argue anything, but like there's a lot of benefit to knowing where you're going, and then that's your goal and you go there. But there's also a lot of benefit of not knowing and just having a lot of willpower and just be like, I'm going to do this. Like I started the podcast without really any thought of where it was going to go, and it's exploded. We'll talk about that later in the podcast. Custom homes, like I just knew I really wanted to build a home. I didn't know anything. I just got in there and just did it. And I think sometimes people can plan themselves to death and they never do anything. And sometimes the only way to learn is just go out and do it. I was a cross country running coach for a long time, and it's like, we had this one kid, Elliot Gaddis was his name. And, bless his heart, he came out. He was a pretty big kid. And the first, couple weeks, maybe a couple months, he couldn't even run a mile when he first came out. But by the end of the year, he was running, 5-6 miles a day, no problem. My point is just start somewhere. And yes, the idea of running a race or running a marathon or doing any long distance event sounds really daunting, but it doesn't start there. It starts with the 1 mile. And if you can't make 1 mile, fine, run a half a mile, walk a half a mile, whatever it takes. And then with that repetition, that building block, then you'll get to what your goal is. And business is no different.
Yeah. And I like to use the term there, compound effort, right? Start small, start building, but you have to start somewhere. And we talk about this on the show all the time, that action over everything. You just have to pick a spot and just start. Just do it. Like the greatest slogan ever invented in marketing was just do it. And that applies so much to entrepreneurship because I can speak to this as well. The number one thing, whenever I'm about to take the next leap, the only thing holding me back is me. And it's because of whether it's imposter syndrome or the fear of putting myself out there for whatever this is. I did it for the first handful of years of my business. And anytime I'm about to take a leap, I have to look in the mirror and be like, the only reason this leap hasn't happened yet is because it's me. And I'm curious if you've had any of those moments throughout your career where starting, years ago to maybe even up into the last year, were there any times where you looked at what you were doing and decided that this has to start with me and taking this, whatever this action might be?
Nothing comes to mind. I guess what I'm thinking of a little bit is sometimes we can get burned. Failure isn't a negative thing. In fact, failing is really important to anybody's success. You look at, obviously, since we're talking about just do it, Nike, obviously Michael Jordan was famously cut from his high school basketball team and, came back, worked hard all winter and came back better than before and, went on to do what he did. I think people like, Winston Churchill lost like tons of elections before he became prime minister at a very important time in history. Abraham Lincoln, I think it was like crazy. He lost like 20 elections or something nuts.
Yeah.
And then at the end came through. And so we learned so much from failure. I don't know if I can think of an exact example to your question, but I can think of lots of failures. And I think I heard someone recently say that their company is really good at failing fast. And I like that. His point is if like you're going to fail fast, figure it out, and then move on, like a band, like get rid of it.
Yep.
And I think recognizing that you're going down is a valuable asset. And I don't think I've done a good job at that. I tend to be a very loyal person, and most people would think that's good. And I do think it's good. However, I've been loyal to the fault of employees that I've had that I was unwilling to. I often joke that my personality is such that it meets where optimism and delusion meet, which makes me great at sales. Makes me terrible at an HR department.
Yeah.
Because I think, oh, they can be better. Oh, they're going to get better. And some of the owner syndrome is that what drives you to be an owner, what drives you to be the entrepreneur, you think everyone has that. Not everybody does. I'm not saying that everybody can't, but not everyone has it. I can't speak to if they can get it or not. That's beyond my brain power or analysis to comment on. But I will say that everyone in your company isn't an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean they can't act like one. It doesn't mean you can't be trained, especially if they're excited about it. But that's where company culture comes in really strongly, because not everyone wants to it. And I think people on the outside look in and they might say, "Oh man, you know what, Brian, Mark, you guys own your business. You got it made in the shade." I'm like, dude, I don't know. I have 3 kids. I'm not sure I'd want them to own a business. I mean, I want them to be educated. I want them to offer. If they're passionate about it, like I want them to do what they're passionate about. But my wife works at the hospital. When she's off, like she's off. Like that's pretty nice. Nights,
Yeah.
weekends, nothing to worry about. You own your own business, especially a home builder like mine. I mean, I remember that's actually one of the reasons why I didn't want to be a home builder. Back in the 80s and 90s, I remember the phone would ring at like 2:00 in the morning. I'd hear my dad pick it up down the hall. And the next morning at breakfast, I'd say, "What was that?" He's like, "Oh, it was raining. Someone's roof was leaking." And I was like, "Man, what business calls you at 2:00 in the morning to And
Yeah.
so anyway, I guess my point is that owning a business is not all it's cracked up to be. It's very rewarding. It's great. I mean, I do love it. Personally, my ADHD probably could never. Sometimes I wonder after 20 years, like, oh man, could I go in corporate America? And all my friends are just like, dude, you wouldn't last, 2 days in corporate America. You just wouldn't be able to handle it. And so anyway, everything you really do have to have a lot of passion. And I
Yeah.
think if I had to choose one thing, like to pick somebody if they're gonna own a business, honestly, I think passion and willpower, throw in some communication for good measure, and I think you got a pretty good potent cocktail of success.
Yeah, yeah. Mark, the more you talk, the more I realize how much we have in common. Having ran a lawn care business, went to college, got into corporate, dropped out of corporate, started a business, married a wife who works in a hospital. It's like I'm looking in the mirror here.
Yeah.
Who she also, God bless her, because she allows me to do this entrepreneur thing while still having her steady income and having insurance and all that jazz.
Funny.
Behind every strong entrepreneur is an incredible wife or partner. So, but you mentioned, the communication aspect of being a business owner. And I realized this in probably about the last year, 2 years here in my business is if I focus on communication, which for me personally, I know that's a strength of mine. If I over communicate with my clients, then I know the risk of losing them or of things falling through the crack drastically falls, which is great for business and great for the client. But I've realized especially in the trades, and I shouldn't just pick on the trades because this is true across so many industries, but the lack of the communication ability, whether it's between business owner and team or teams and customers or owners and customers, it really results in either a less than desired experience or, just poor internal culture because there's a lack of communication or communication leadership. When you say being a strong communicator it's obviously a strength of yours, but how do you implement that across your company, across the people who work with you or the contractors who work with you who are not necessarily, your employees, and then making sure that that's relayed to the customer? What does that look like in your business?
That's a good question. I think it kind of is almost like a 3-part answer. So I guess I'll start with the first one, which is this is something my dad shared that I say all the time. To budding entrepreneurs and really to myself too. You can be a good builder in my case and bad at business, and you won't make it. You could be a bad builder and be good at business, and you would make it. And hopefully, you're good at both. I think that's true about most businesses. And I think one thing that we don't do a very good job of is educating in high school and middle school, just basic life skills.
Hmm.
So much of what I know, I've modeled after, successful parents. And I'm very fortunate that way. Not everyone has had that experience. But to watch that firsthand, of how you treat people, of your soft skills, your communication skills, follow through, ethics. I was getting a culture, constantly. I had no idea what kind of gift that was until now I'm a parent and a business owner. I just didn't know. I wish we had something more like that. I mean, this podcast could be solely devoted to, life skills 101. And honestly, in high school, I wish they had like one credit
Yeah.
from the time you're like eighth grade to your senior year. You had to like learn just some basic stuff because it'd be so helpful just to our society, frankly. But so anyway, that would be my first response on the business. The second part about, communication, there are business tools that help us. So we use something called Builder Trend. It's an online portal where our clients can log into it. And our project manager, every Friday, we ask them, there's a daily log or a Friday log, we call it, and they will send a recap. And this has come down from me because I know I would really like it. And it's the software is actually built for it, and it's really built for people that you're building for. Let's say you're in Arizona, building for a snowboard from Minnesota, and they're maybe not there. Whether you're there or not, good communication will span that distance. And so what I like about it is every Friday, our project manager will do a recap. Hey, Monday was sheetrock, on this job. Tuesday, we whatever. It'll just basically outline in real high level, not really micro detail. Just, hey, sheetrock has continued. Next week we're going to be painting. The following week we've got cabinets coming in. We have 3 important decisions coming up. We'll meet at our next meeting. So just a quick look behind, a look at, and a look ahead is every Friday is super helpful to all clients. The other thing that we've only started doing this probably about 2 years ago is we keep a bi-weekly meeting with all of because we're a smaller company, we are a company of 4. So let's say I'm building a house for you, Brien, is we would meet every 2 weeks on, let's say, a Tuesday at 9 a.m. And if we don't need to meet, we'll cancel it. I don't like meeting to meet. And we'll have an agenda where we're emailing it to the day before. I mean, this is basic stuff, guys. Anybody listening, like, this is not rocket science. But I will say this is a lot of hospitality. And one thing that building in particular could take a huge cue from is the restaurant world and the hotel world. Hospitality, most businesses have a lot to learn from those two in particular. Like when you go out to eat, most of what you remember is the ambiance. 3 things: the ambiance, like what it feels like in the restaurant; your service, like obviously how they served you; and food. And honestly, I'm not sure what order is most important. I think every person might be different. Like, if I had to rate those on a scale of 1, if you had amazing food but terrible service, you're not going back. You might go back to get a different server if the food was that good. If you have great food and great service, it could probably overcome a poor atmosphere. And obviously the gold standard is all 3, but it's a little bit like that old adage. You can pick your price, you can pick your service, or you can pick the person. Like, which one do you want to, but you're not going to get all 3. You're like in a building world, you're not going to get the best home ever with the best service ever, with the best people ever at the lowest cost. Like, wait a minute, that's going to be the highest cost. And so there's something, that triangle is always going to be readjusting a little bit. And I think that's true of almost all businesses. I can't think of one that wouldn't apply to. And then the last part is like communication outside of what I can control. So like my electrician is not he's a subcontractor. So I'm the contractor. He's a subcontractor by the definition, right? He's sub to my contract, but he's my people. So obviously I am picking people that A, can do the work, B, have good value, but also represent my brand to a certain degree. We actually recently parted ways with a longtime electrician. And honestly, it wasn't his skill set. His price was a problem. He was getting a little high on the hog, but honestly, his attitude is a real problem. He continually, especially my female clients, he really rubbed them the wrong way. And I can handle the abrasion, but if my clients are telling me that they're upset, that they're just not feeling comfortable around somebody, that is a huge red flag to me. And so that was something that my client had to communicate to me so that I was aware that it was a problem. And then the problem sort of took care of itself. But I guess the root question you had is, how do I control their communication? Ultimately, it's up to my project manager and myself to hold them accountable for communication. And some subs are way better than others. Like my cabinet shop is amazing. Like he gets me bids fast. He gets me feedback fast. If anything, he's almost getting it faster to me than I can handle. And then it's up to my PM to like prioritize the communication to the client. And then I have somebody like my excavator, he's great, and he doesn't interact a ton with the client other than if they have little kids. They love, they love to come sit on Troy's lap. Everyone loves to dig a hole. Even my kids, I'm like, the builder's chop liver, the excavator. Oh, dude, you're living high on the kid's hog right there.
Dude, I'm 34, and if I see an excavator, I'm just like my 2-year-old. I'm running towards like,
totally.
Excavator.
Totally. Or demo day. I've had a number of adults that want to get in there and demo the house. But anyway, the point is he's terrible at billing. I mean, awful at billing. Now, that's one of the few things that you could probably be. A client is okay if you're bad. Actually, I'm gonna contradict myself. The client is fine with not getting a bill, but good communication is even good billing. Like, I've had architects in the past and excavators actually, that because their billing was so slow, and I'm talking like it took months past due. The problem is like the time to bill. You need to be very accurate in billing and consistent, and it's usually not a problem if you deal with it in the moment. So like if you hit, let's say in my case, you hit bad soil, which is just, I won't go into it on the podcast, but you hit bad soil, and nobody can control that. I can't control it. Your client can't control it. Excavator can't control it. Like, that's an act of God. It's actually written into our contract. It says act of God. It's like below the surface. We don't know what's there unless we did investigation. And let's say it costs $9,000 or $10,000 on a $2 million build. It's not the end of the world, but nobody wants to. It's like the first thing. It's like day one, you're excited. Day two, you hit bad soil. You got 10. Like, it's just terrible timing. But like, if you didn't tell somebody, or if we didn't tell that to the client till like 3 months later, now you've made a little problem into a really big problem. Yep. It's no different than like a wound on your arm that you let go septic, or just really pus up or something. That's where communication is super critical. And if you are not billing on a regular basis, even for small stuff, people forget about stuff. We're very much in the know. So anyway, I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but you got a bunch of them.
No, that's perfect. Well, it's what happens when you ask a 3-pronged question. So, but I loved the analogy there, or not an analogy. You're talking about little problems that can become big if you don't communicate. And I know we're going down a rabbit hole here with communication, but it's so important, because I learned this the hard way multiple times over in my business, where something goes a little bit wrong. You're like, well, let me fix that real quick, or let me do this and patch it over. Yet it drags out the problem another 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, whatever it is. And before long, there's you're over your budget, or the results aren't there, and you haven't said a word in 3 weeks. And meanwhile, the client is in the dark. If you're not communicating proactively, your client is in the dark. And I don't know, I always tell people it's kind of like back in the world of dating. It was like, if you don't hear from your significant other for a week, and then 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks, and then you're like, well, now I'm just going to spiral into like anything and everything is wrong. Like, they don't like me anymore. We must not be dating. This is terrible, right? Well, simple communication can solve that. And it's the same between the business and the client relationship, where you have to tell them when things aren't right, but it's also really smart to tell them when things are right and things are going well. Just drop in and say, hey, in my case with marketing, we had this, we launched this account on Monday. Here's Friday. We've got 5 new hot leads that came in. I saw you close 2 of them. Congratulations. Like, that's amazing. And it's such a big thing.
We have found that I'd mentioned that biweekly meeting. Not only does that organically happen because you have something, and it could be virtual and it could be in person. Obviously, if we're on a job site, we're meeting the client on the job site if it's appropriate. But the communication, sometimes, if we're running 4 or 5 jobs, it becomes just a lot of communication. I mean, a big part of it. And if someone was to hire you to build their custom home, and you said your number one thing is like, I'm a great communicator, which I certainly have said, but like, that's probably not why they're buying their home. You're buying your home because you do great architecture, you do great work, and they want to spend time with you, yada yada yada. But my point is like, if you say you're great at communication and then you don't follow, or the client feels like that you should be communicated more, but you're not doing it, now you're not delivering on the thing that you said. And what's problem sometimes with your team is you could spend every day, all day, just talking, right? I mean, let's say you got a group, let's just think about from a friend standpoint, that's what the weekends are for. You got a group text with like your brothers, your cousins, your friends, whoever your group is that you could spend 3 hours talking about football or whatever you're into. And before you know it, the whole day has gone by and you haven't done a single thing. Like, that is a danger of different kinds, like unguided communication. And so what I have found by having that dedicated time, I will never schedule something within that 90-minute window or a 1 hour window for that client, is now they actually don't pester you. And that's not a negative way, but they're not bringing up a bunch of small random things, because guess what? It can wait till it comes to the meeting in person. And then the stuff that maybe didn't need to be talked about just falls away. And then you're talking about the important stuff. It also allows us the time and room. Like if you ask me, Brien, hey, I need a quote on a, adding a wet bar, or I need a quote on a different kind of material on whatever, it takes me time to go get that bid, compile the bid, run past the designers, I can't just do that like a snap. It's not like an a la carte menu, at least in my business. It takes me some time to like figure it out. I need that 2 weeks to really get all these information. Then on the agenda, it's like, hey, to do this upgrade is $7,965. We can do it if you say yes. It's so much more professional. And you've also set the expectation. This is something else I've learned for those that are either own a business or are going to start one, is like, it starts at the top. And because I'm the first point of contact as I lead the sales, and my name is on the door and the sign, as you say, what I say trickles all the way down. And we've had contract changes, we've had operational changes that, maybe I went to a continuing education class, or I interviewed someone on the podcast and I love what they did on their business. It's going to take me at least a year to get it through my business cycle. Now, because my business cycle is a long time, it might take, let's just forget how long it takes me to acquire a client. But let's say I'm building you a 5,000 square foot house. It's going to take me about a year to build it for you, Brien. So if I'm 6 months into the build and I want to do something different, I've already communicated the expectations. I can't change mid-flow. Like that's not, so it could even be a bad thing. Like I talk about this all the time on my podcast about business. Like I didn't go to school. Actually, I did go to school for business, but they didn't teach me this. I didn't know what the difference between margin and markup was. So I was operating on markup, which for those that don't know the difference, go look it up. It's important. It's about a 2% delta. So if you think you're making, 20% net profit, you're actually making 17.5 or 18%. And you span that for 20 years, I've left millions of dollars on the table because I didn't know the difference. And so I talk about it all the time. I'm not afraid to say that because I don't want other people to go down. We work too hard, all of us, to not know the difference between margin and markup, and also educating our clients, because honestly, that's just knowledge. Knowledge shouldn't be the thing, in my opinion, at least in this scenario, business, of what makes you successful or not. Hopefully it's your hard work, your communication. Like just because you didn't know 2 + 2 didn't equal 4, it's a terrible analogy because you should know that. But I guess my point is like so you went in corporate America. If anyone who's been in corporate America, like they have, accountants and they have, CPAs, and like they are going to that is the one benefit of having a much bigger structure. If you start right out of school, which is where we can go with the rest of this podcast, which I highly advise, that there are so many paths into the trades of owning a business in a way that I don't know if any other field has such opportunity to buy a business or start one than construction. But listening to podcasts like this, educating yourself on these business principles by talking to other business owners, that's the only way you're going to learn. And I guess that is a school of hard knocks, because that, I've now have learned that lesson very painfully, but I paid for that education, unfortunately, unknowingly. And where I was going with this, with your margin, can't really remember where I was going down that rabbit hole exactly.
Well, we were talking about how these are things you can apply towards starting a business in the trades or in construction, and knowing, or having the wherewithal to reach out and ask people for help, ask people for the education, or become an apprentice. You could probably fill in the blanks better than I, but I think these are the types of things that, you can go to school for a little bit. You can learn stuff in school and trade school. You can learn the technical side of things, but it's kind of in the school of hard knocks where you get out there and you're like, all right, I'm learning from somebody who started this thing. They created something from nothing. And there's a lot of knowledge in their head that they can share with me that I can gain, and then go start taking my lumps, right? And I don't want to make it sound awful, but business ownership is freaking hard, right? We already talked about that today, where you're going to take your lumps, but it's a matter of how much you learn from them. So that's kind of the path we were headed down. I'd love to get your opinion on that.
Well, I think so. Obviously, I'm very passionate about construction because I'm in it, but I would say, well, these are facts. So I believe construction, in both commercial and residential, it have the largest percent of GDP effect in the country. I mean, our country depends greatly on the American dream of owning your home. And it's great. That's a whole nother podcast about, onboarding. Owning a home has become much more difficult and much more expensive, which if you are most of our tax laws are written that if you don't own a home, you're missing out on huge growth vehicles. But that's, like I said, that's a whole nother podcast. We could talk about that. But owning a business that supports that is equally important, or being involved with that, because that business is always going to exist. It's fundamental, right? Food and housing. I mean, you need shelter. I mean, the cavemen were building, finding, rock caves or, thatch. I mean, It's just fundamental to who we are as humans that we need some form of shelter. Anyway, owning or being a part of that is really important, because there'll always be business around that. Where you fit is more specifically unique to each person and kind of their personality and what their interests are. Right now, I think I heard a stat the other day that's 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day. Mm-hmm. I don't know this number. What percentage of them own businesses? A huge percent. I don't know what it is. I bet it's more than 70, 80%. It's got to be massive. Yeah. And so where I'm going with this is we've seen in construction in particular that I think the stat was like for every 7 plumbers that retire, only 1 journeyman is taking their place. So you have a massive attrition rate. Guess what happens when that happens? I think a couple of things. One is prices are going to skyrocket, which is not good for housing in general.
They already have.
However, your wages are going to go up quite quickly as well, because now we have a major supply and demand influx. So as a custom home builder, now I'm lucky because I've built 20 years of relationships, honestly, with one plumber. Now his son is taking over the business. So I know I'm good. He's younger than I am, so we're good. And so, but my point is that most of the plumbers, HVAC, electricians, the trades that are doing all the work, Mike Rowe made it famous with dirty jobs and continues to do so. He's very involved with this next level. There's massive opportunity. So I think if I could do a do-over, I'm not sure I'd be a builder. Now, I can't undo a do-over, and I do love design, and I like what I do. But in terms of making money, for one thing, I can't sell Mark Williams Custom Homes. I just learned that a couple of years ago when I was rebranding my company. We had won Builder of the Year in 2021 in Minnesota, and I was thinking, this is going to be amazing. But you realize, like, if I have a job, I don't have a business, because the adage is if I could leave my business for 3 months and it could operate without me, that is a business. My business couldn't operate it could probably go 1 billing cycle. It could probably go a month, maybe a month and a half. But honestly, I'm not going to sell anything new. I don't have a sales system without me. And I'm not to put everything about me, but I guess we're interviewing me, so I'll just reflect on my own journey. But the point is if you're out there and you own a business and you couldn't take off 3 months or 6 months, you don't have a business. You have a job. And that's kind of a sobering wake up, because at least for what I do, that means I can't sell my business. Are very unlikely. And construction companies are notoriously difficult to sell unless you have lots of land and things like that. But guess what? If you're a plumber, if you're an electrician, if you're an HVAC, you have a book of business. Guess what? You have 40 builders you work with. You're not dependent on just me. You've got 40 of them. And now you have residual income. You have you have these repeating client bases. You're selling product that you can do warranty programs with homeowners once they move in. That is very attractive. I saw something recently that a lot of Harvard grads were not going to go do the whole Wall Street, 100 hours a week thing. They were buying mom and pop HVAC and electric and plumbing companies across the country. Mm-hmm. They're essentially printing money because they've already, guess what? You don't have to start this whole business. I never even thought when I was 23 years old, when I started my company, I never even crossed my mind that I could buy a business. I had no money, so I thought I had to start something from scratch, which that didn't make a lot of sense either. But your earlier comment, Brien, about, like, to me, let's, find an industry and try a few of them, apprentice with an electrician. Now there is some schooling involved there, but that's fine. To your point about trade school, there's trade schools for HVAC, there's trade schools for plumbing, but bottom line is within a few years, you could own the company. How wild is that? Mm-hmm. You're not going to go into 3M or Best Buy and in a few years own the company. Are you kidding me? And so there is massive opportunity. That's where the real opportunity is. Or you learn from someone that's, you're surrounded by a great company, and now you can go take your trades and go start your own business if that's really what you want to do. But for me right now, if I could do a do-over in 2024, I would go work for, let's say Brien is a 60-year-old HVAC company. Your kids don't want to get into it, And guess what? You would love for your legacy to continue. And you have a very profitable business. You're making $500 million a year. I don't know what your numbers are. And it doesn't really matter for this analogy. You've been in business for 30, 40 years. You're making money. And so guess what? You would like nothing more than to have some Mark Williams come learn from you and then do some sort of transition ownership. And so I don't even need money. That's the genius. Because I could work for you, Brien, and say, tell you what, Brien, if in 5 years, I would like to own your company. And you look at me and you're like, oh man, this kid's got it going on. This would be really cool. Tell you what, 2 years, you buy some equity, and then we're going to do a buyout phase. Over the next 5 years, I don't know how this works. I just know the concept of it. You'd hire a lawyer, you'd hire a few people that help with this transition. And here this in this analogy, it's me, Mark Williams. I didn't have a single cent to my name. And within 5 years, I own that HVAC company. And maybe I continue to pay some sort of legacy cost to that person until that buyout period ends. But now, 5 years later, I own this HVAC company. I'm making $500,000-$600,000 a year, a very good living. And now I bypassed kind of all kinds of different things. And I'm not saying you don't have to learn, and this is obviously a rosy, happy ending story, but that is out there because most businesses close shop. They don't sell. So how many businesses out there are available if you just open up the door and say, what would it take for me to be an owner of your company?
Yep. And I love that. As you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, dang, there's a lot of talk out there, and like private equity has gotten into the trades. Like that's a big thing right now.
Is it really?
Equity. Yeah. Private equity is buying up a lot of trades businesses because they're not idiots. They see the profitability, they see the recurring business, and they see the opportunity. So there is a lot of PE going in and buying trades businesses, which is great and all. So I think some firms are better than others based on, what they want to continue doing with the business. However, I love your idea of, let's say you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to start a business, but you look at, I'm going to use lawn care since we have that adjacent to one another. I'm going to use that as an example because...
By the way, Brien, when you still smell fresh cut grass, doesn't it transplant you back to being like in high school?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like, I used to listen to Louis L'Amour book tapes. I'm dating myself here. I had like a little Walkman with the tapes. And I would listen to Louis L'Amour book tapes while I'd mow the yards. But that smell of the fresh cut grass, I mean, it just... Every time I go by someone's yard who's getting cut, it's just like transports me.
Oh, I love it. It does the same thing to me. And I tell my wife the only place I'm allowed to have an ego is with my yard because I renovated our whole front yard. It's the finest turf in Ohio. And I just love going out there and mowing it, especially in the spring and early summer when the grass is blooming. You just cut it and you get that fresh thing. You're like, oh gosh, that's $1 million. I love it. But using that as an example, in my mind, I always thought you had to go and start the business from the ground up. Like that's just the way to do it. That's what I did with my business. But when you mentioned that you don't need $1, you don't need $1 to get into this business. And I can tell you, I'm only 34 and I love it when younger people approach me and you're like, hey, can I like work with you? Can I learn from you? Can I do this? That's why I do a lot of coaching in my space. But I guarantee you, like you said, a 60-year-old boomer who's maybe getting ready to pass a torch, but I know a lot of them who don't have someone to pass it to. If a 20-something, 30-something-year-old person comes up and says, hey, I'd love to just work with you, learn from you, and ultimately my goal is to own this business, I guarantee you that owner would, at least 9 out of 10 of them would be like, oh my gosh, yes, this is incredible. And you get to skip so many steps. You're going to learn a lot. There's going to be a lot of bumps in the road, but you don't have to invest your money. You don't have to buy all this equipment. And most importantly, you don't have to acquire these customers. They already have a base. Like it's almost a no-brainer.
I agree. And I mean, that's what education, this is a good transition in the time remaining to talk about the Curious Collective, because it kind of goes into this. So I mentioned before just briefly, so I started the Curious Builder podcast 2 years ago. And this is, maybe I'll just quick give you the intro. So I was on a builders podcast, a good friend of mine. Actually, I went to this thing called Contractor Coalition. So I'm a small builder in Minnesota. And my wife said, hey, I think down in Nashville, they're doing this thing called Contractor Coalition, where 30 builders from around the country get together for 3 days and they learn from each other. And I'm like, I don't like when one person speaks to like a big audience. It reminds me of college, like 1,000 people and like no, I don't learn. I learn like what we're doing right now. I learn by talking. I learn by small group. Anyway, I called one of the head people there and I said, it's $10,000 for 3 days. So it's expensive. And I said, is this worth my time? And she said, you'll make your money in the first hour. And I was like, dang, that's confident. Like, I'm in. Like, that's
Yeah.
what I needed to hear. So anyway, and she was right. We talked about contracts in a way that I was doing my design agreement incorrectly, where I was crediting it against the future job, which I was basically giving away my work for free. And anyway, long story short, I wanted, that's expensive, and I had to travel to do it, and it was 3 days. I wanted something. I'm not a very private person. I'm very open. If you ask me a sincere question, even if I'm your competitor, like, I'll tell you. And so, that puts me in sort of a rare space with a microphone, talking about anything. I don't do it from the standpoint that I have this need to share everything that I have. It's more like I want to tell you all the ways that I've failed, so that if some of those resonate with you, you can avoid that failure. That's why I always talk about margin markup, because that is the huge one. And I've had a number of people say, I didn't know that either. And I said, well, I hope you didn't go 18 years without knowing it like I did. And so anyway, so we started last year. I thought, it'd be fun. We do this thing called the Builder 20. And it's been around with the National Home Builders Association for quite some time. And I think maybe 80s and 90s. And you would find 20 builders that would be of similar revenue from around the country, not in your same market. You sign non-disclosure agreements. You get together twice a year and you share everything, your contracts, your operations, your handbook, like everything. And the idea is, like, we have so much to learn from each other. Why does Brien have to come up with his handbook and how he does this and how he does marketing? Like, you do this over here in a different state. Why don't we talk together? And I'm like, I don't even need to be in a different state. I can be in the same city, because I just don't care. Because at the end, the reason you're going to build with me, Brien, is not going to be based on my price. Because if we're competing on the same strata, then we're building the same materials. So therefore, it shouldn't be about price, because we're using the same stuff. Then it's the little small nuance. At the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is, do you want to spend the next 2 years of your life with me? And that's okay if the answer is no. I'm not for everybody. But if I am, let's build a home together. So that's my underlying belief. And so therefore, I don't personally feel threatened by another builder that knows all the things that I know or don't know, because we're just different people, and that's okay. And so I've started this locally called the Curious Builder Collective in Minnesota. And the first one was on banking and finance. And we just said, you know what, one of my sponsors for the podcast said, hey, would you ever want to put something together and just see, they wanted to get in front of builders to sell their software. And I said, sure, I can put them together. We had 30 people show up in 2 weeks' notice. And I'm like, whoa, that's not normal, because it's hard. And where I was going with this is, people want to get in front of you. You talked about coaching. I get a lot of people that reach me out for my coffee. Well, if I took every coffee date, I won't have a job. I would just have coffee, which I'm annoying at baseline. With that much coffee, I'm super annoying. And so I said, you know what, I got something. So I started the Curious Builder Collective because of that. So 3 weeks later, I said, I want people to pay a little bit. So people pay $1,000 to be a part of it. We meet 4 times a year for 4 hours. And my proposition is, if you aren't willing to spend $1,000 a year on your education, you just don't get it. And it's amazing how often I have to actually sell it. But once you've done it, I guarantee you're going to do it again, because that is the best money you'll ever invest because you're investing in yourself. Now I have to hire people. I mean, it's a real cost to do this, but that has caught on like wildfire. We have 25 builders here locally in Minnesota that, we've done branding, we've done marketing, we've done financing, we've done contracts and then I let the group is dictating what they want to do next year. I'm not the expert. I'm just a guide. So we break into small groups of 9 and we just talk. It's a little bit like Jerry Bierman's conduit. His might be a little bit structured different than mine, but it's the same thing. As we have so much to learn from each other. And so we're actually going, because this has been so successful, we're going into Atlanta, Austin, Texas, and Phoenix next year, where the Curious Collective, I've found other builders that are of like mind. They'll be sort of my representatives of the Curious Builder, and I'll create all the content and all the information, but they're just nobody knows who Mark Williams is in Atlanta, but they know who Brad Robinson is and Vince Longo. They're builders down there. And so they'll coalesce the group. They'll lead what I do up here, but it's all under this one banner of the Curious Builder. Because my proposition is anybody could be the Curious Builder. I just happen to be the one with the microphone. But anyway, so that's really what the collective is, which kind of piggybacks on your idea of how do we mentorship? How do we learn from each other? How do we grow as an industry? Because the overall goal for all of this is I have a lot to learn from you. Hopefully something you say sparks something in me to make my business better, because this idea that we all race to the bottom is crazy. And I believe I have undercharged my clients for the work that I've done for them for my entire career. They talk about 3 phases of your career. There's the learn, earn, and return. And I joke that I missed the earning phase. So I've learned, and now I'm in this return phase. I got to go back and figure out, some earning stuff. But anyway, that's the collective.
Oh, I love that. And what a great idea. That was going to be one of my questions is, have you navigated a way to bring it outside of Minnesota? And obviously the answer is yes. I think that's really cool that you've probably built through your network these builders that are in the other cities that can kind of be the conduit, if you will, to mention our mutual friend, Jerry Bierman, who runs a very similar group here in Cincinnati. I think that's really cool. And it's such a great point. It's probably a good one to put a bookend here. I want to make sure we land the plane for it. I don't want to hold you all day here, but I could go on for hours with you, Mark. This has been a ton of fun. But having the kind of the collective, stronger together. I don't want to be cliche, but across industries and specifically talking about yours in building, stronger together makes way too much sense because if you can share your resources, if you can share your knowledge, if you can make improvements in your business that you learned from your friend in the business across town or across the state, then that everybody's winning. And now who else is winning is everybody's clients, because now you're doing your business in a more efficient or a better manner, or providing a better experience in a way that you weren't familiar with before, putting heads together. Now everybody's winning. So it's, I think that's just a perfect mindset.
If we have the time, I would say the thing I would add to that, we talked about this, and this was something that Jerry and I connected on. I was in the middle of training for my first 50-mile trail race, and I guess he's a big ultra athlete as well, and so we bonded a little bit on that. But I've always kind of used the litmus test of, if I like it, I want to see who else might. And so not that I'm going to make everyone run ultras, but in Minnesota, we have a strong Finnish culture. I'm pretty Scandinavian. It's like, I love saunas. And so we're actually doing something this January called Sauna Camp. And it's open to any business owner. It's not so open to anybody, frankly, but it's the end of January, and it's a half-day deal where I actually interviewed her on the podcast, Dr. Mel Krug, and she's going to lead business owners through somatic breath work, which is like a fancy word for like breathing. So like if you've ever been stressed, whether it's athletically, a sales meeting, with your spouse, like just in life, you can actually breathe through the fight or flight method or response and your physiological response, and actually work by breathing. You can actually navigate through it. You actually use that principle then to go into the cold water in a lake that we have in Minnesota, and then you'll go into the sauna and then repeat. And then at the end, we're doing this big Mediterranean style meal. So the reason I bring it up is it seems like last year I had a lot of guests on the podcast that talked about wellness and working on, it's cliche, but it's true, working on yourself or finding balance between work and life, and finding where are you at in all this? Because if you burn out here, you're not present here. And if you have nothing to give your family, it's not going to be very long, but you have no business. And everything is very, in sync. And then to further that up, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do boot camp. So we're in May, we're going out to Zion National Park. And every year I go up to the Boundary Waters, which is in northern Minnesota, get rid of the phone. There's no phone, no alcohol, and you're just in the woods for like 3-4 days. I get so much energy from nature, but also just being off the grid. And so I'm like, there's this stereotype that builders, in my opinion, that this is a stereotype that they're fat, hairy, drunk, flannel wearing, gruff people. I don't know a single one. Actually, I know one. My plumber. I got a plumber who's pretty gruff. But honestly, when I went to this contractor coalition, a second one, we're up at 5:30 in the morning. A couple other guys were running with me. One guy was, a couple guys were slinging weights. We have right now a group of 13 builders that are doing 75 hard. You can, and so it's just like there's more out there. You just takes people to talk about it and make it normal. So anyway, the boot camp, we'll see who signs up. I think we have 3 people signed up right now. It's quite a ways away. It's in May, but the whole goal is you get off the airplane, you actually have to give me your phone. I'll lock it in a safety deposit box. We'll have one phone that, for emergency contact for people. And then we're doing 2-a-day workouts, but it could be like long hikes in Zion National Park, which is a beautiful park. It could be running, canyoneering, biking. We'll have good meals. And then just time as owners, just sitting around a fire, just talking about life, business. I don't care what they talk about, but the whole point is to get away from all this noise of your phone and emails and owning a business. It's sort of like this concept. You have to check out to check in. And so anyway, there's all kinds of stuff. I'm sort of, we'll see if it works.
Wow, that sounds incredible. That sounds like a lot of
Well,
fun.
you should come.
Yeah, I might have to. That sounds awesome. Wow. Well, Mark, I've probably kept you past the prime date. I know you're a busy man. I want to thank you first of all for coming on the show. I think we hit on a lot of things that are just vitally important to business ownership in general, but especially in the trades. And if we've encouraged people to explore the trades as an option for owning a business, for starting a business, for being part of one of these businesses, I mean, the landscape is ripe for success right now. So I think you've done a fantastic job of exposing us to that. So awesome. I don't want to glaze over the fact, just your 50-mile trail run. So you're like an ultra athlete. So that's pretty cool too. You get a lot of,
Get a lot of, I tell you what, you can crush a lot of book tapes and train for that. I read so many, well, listened to so many book tapes this summer. It's unreal. The problem is then, there's all these great podcasts and great book tapes out there. The problem is now you get all these ideas and then you start putting them into your company. So my poor team is just like, oh, great. He just finished another book of what he wants to implement into his business. So.
Guess what, guys? Mark has another book for us.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Well, Mark, thank you again for joining us. How can, obviously, I want to encourage people to go check out the Curious Builder podcast. I'm sure you can find that in any pod player out there. If we have any listeners who want to reach out to you, maybe start a conversation or learn more about you, what are the best places to get in contact with you?
I mean, honestly, Instagram, both the Curious Builder podcast or Mark D. Williams Custom Homes will get you there on Instagram. Otherwise, obviously, our website, Mark D. Williams Custom Homes and the Curious Builder podcast. Actually, just Curious Builder now. Oddly enough, we can talk about that offline. But yeah, you'll be able to find the Curious Builder. And on the contact page, you can reach out to me through there.
All right. I love it. We'll make sure we have all that notated in the show notes. Well, Mark, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
All right.